We begin today with the growing surge of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. We are getting a look at the conditions inside a Border Patrol facility for unaccompanied children for the first time since President Biden took office. Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar shared these pictures from Donna, Texas. This comes as the number of children in U.S. custody has grown to more than 15,000. CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez reports on the situation from the Mexican side of the border.
Within minutes of arriving at this stretch of the border, with El Paso just on the other side, we saw a man with a child in his arms and a woman rushing across and into the United States. They appear to be spotted soon after.
We're told that many families are still just trying to get to the other side to turn themselves in, thinking they can claim asylum. But the Biden administration says most families will be sent right back.
It's what happened to Glenda Mendez of Guatemala.
You want people to see you as human beings, trying the best for your children.
She and her 14-year-old son Gustavo have been living at a migrant shelter in Juarez for a month now.
So how's it all been?
Pues muy difícil también.
Very difficult? ¿Por qué? Why?
Pues de primero porque hay muchos peligros aquí en México.
A lot of dangers here in Mexico.
They haven't considered sending him alone, though the Biden administration's policy toward unaccompanied minors would mean he could stay in the U.S. while his case is processed. Republicans have blamed the president for the crisis.
The message is coming back that, hey, we got a new president. Come on in.
On Sunday, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas repeatedly said that was not the message.
The border is closed.
Current policy is that migrants, whether they cross illegally or through a port of entry, apply for asylum in the United States. President Biden said the administration is working to change that.
We're in the process of doing it now, including making sure that we reestablish what existed before, which was they can stay in place and make their case from their home country.
But many people, like Mendez, say waiting is not possible.
So it was more the fear of the threats against you and your family that brought you here, not necessarily the policy. No fue necesariamente la política.
Ahí está, sí.
President Biden said he may visit the border, but did not specify when. In the meantime, Mexico says it's beefing up its presence along its southern border, where Central and South American migrants are streaming in. Manuel Bojorquez, CBS News, Juarez, Mexico.
For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga. Hi, Nicole. So just how many unaccompanied children are in U.S. custody? Do we have a full picture of the number at this point?
Hi, Tanya. Thanks for having me. Well, right now, more than 15,000 unaccompanied minors are in U.S. custody. These are migrants that have, crossed over the U.S.-Mexico border. And let's break down that number a little bit. Just about 4,900 unaccompanied minors remain in Custom and Border Protection custody. Some are in a tent-holding facility in South Texas right now. Others are at other stations along the border with Mexico. And that number has dropped ever so slightly from Saturday, but it is still really record-breaking. And according to government records, unaccompanied children are spending an average of about 136 hours in CBP custody. That is far beyond the legal limit of 72 hours. And once kids and teenagers are released from CBP, they're handed over to the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, which, at that point, many of them are released to families, sponsors. But as of Saturday, HHS was also housing roughly 10,500 unaccompanied children in emergency facilities and shelters licensed by states.
So President Biden has yet to visit the border, but he did say yesterday he would visit the southwest border soon. His Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, visited border facilities in El Paso this weekend with a bipartisan delegation of lawmakers. Here's what he said about the border in an interview with ABC News yesterday. Let's listen.
The message is quite clear. Do not come. The border is closed. The border is secure. We are expelling families. We are expelling single adults. under the CDC's authority, under Title 42 of the United States Code, because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and that is a public health imperative. We are encouraging children not to come. Now is not the time to come. Do not come.
So how is Secretary Mayorkas defending the Biden administration's messaging? He is invoking Title 42, which is something a lot of people criticize the Trump administration for putting into place. Is there a little bit of, backwalking here from the Biden administration?
Yeah, well, at first what we heard from DHS Secretary Mayorkas was do not come now. Now what we're starting to hear is do not come, period. The border is closed, as you heard in that clip right there. And Secretary Mayorkas has really emerged as this chief defender of the Biden administration's immigration policy. He appeared on 4 different networks just this Sunday and sort of batting off attacks from both the right and the left. And as you just heard, Secretary Mayorkas held firm on the administration's assertion that the southern border remains closed, while still stressing it would not deport unaccompanied minors and instead seek housing for them while they apply for asylum here in the United States. Now, in the past, Mayorkas has also stayed away from using the word crisis to describe the situation at the border, but the urgency here is clear. And if it's not apparent to our viewers, Tanya, let me just say that while this is not a national security crisis, this is a humanitarian emergency. And Mayorkas stressed that the journey from Central America to the United States is quite treacherous. DHS has said migrant border crossings are on pace to reach their highest level in over 2 decades. The previous record is May of 2019. The Trump administration arrested nearly 133,000 migrants during that month. Mayorkas also trying to explain here how the United States is working with Central American countries to increase their own capacity for asylum seekers. We learned this morning that a delegation from the White House and the State Department are currently traveling to Mexico and Guatemala today to, quote unquote, develop an effective and humane plan of action to manage migration. We've also learned that the Biden administration now has placed more than 17,000 radio ads in Spanish, in Portuguese, in 6 different indigenous languages to discourage U.S.-bound migration from Central America and Brazil. In addition, nearly 600 digital ads have been placed, according to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who just briefed reporters. So the administration trying to make this message loud and clear, but yes, changing the urgency behind it, quite frankly, and what sounds to be a little bit different than some of the promises we heard from then candidate Biden on the campaign trail when it came to immigration and, seeking asylum in this country.
And Nicole, getting back to the trip that lawmakers made to the border, including those who visited El Paso, they called on the Biden administration to allow journalists and reporters into border facilities to document the conditions. What more do we know about the conditions in these facilities as some images are just starting to come out? And what rationale has the Biden administration given to journalists about access?
Well, as you can see from those photos from Congressman Cuellar, in a word, the conditions are overcrowded. And as you pointed out, a bipartisan delegation of senators accompanied Secretary Mayorkas to the border on Friday. We heard from Senator Rob Portman, who was on the trip. He told our CBS News anchor of Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan, that it's amazing how little his constituents know about the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border right now. The Custom and Border Protection facility that lawmakers visited in El Paso, Texas on Friday was at 450% of its pandemic level capacity, if you can believe that. And they didn't visit another overcrowded tent facility in Donna, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, but had they on Friday, they would have seen more than 3,900 minors in custody. That is, get this, a 1,500% of its pandemic capacity. So just so much overcrowding, and the White House has said that there are privacy concerns, there are COVID-19 concerns. You know, they note that they have been open about some of the numbers of unaccompanied migrants, especially migrant children that we've seen. But it's one thing to see those numbers, Tanya, and it's another thing to see the visuals, the actual children sleeping on mats on the floor in these tented facilities, not able to see sunlight for hours, no social distancing, and to hear their stories. And our correspondents, Mireya Villarreal and Manuel Bojorquez, who you just heard from, have been speaking to some of the children as young as 10 who have been fleeing, you know, their countries in Central America, who have described a pull from what they perceive to be a more hopeful message from President Biden, but also that they have been pushed out by gang violence, the aftermath of hurricanes, and political oppression.
All right, Nicole Sganga, thank you so much for that. But please stand by. We're going to come back to you in just a moment.